A shooter fired multiple shots at former President Donald Trump in an assassination attempt at a rally in Pennsylvania. One of the bullets struck Trump in the ear, causing him to quickly take cover behind the podium. We can see within 3 seconds the first line of Secret Service defense jumped into the line of fire, creating a shield around him with their bodies. This is not a political video. The purpose of this is to examine the assassination attempt using open source intelligence methods and expert analysis from law enforcement officers. Lieutenant Tim McMillan, retired law enforcement officer who has extensive experience having worked 5 presidential details in the past, said this on X. They basically formed a bulletproof barrier around him. They didn't let him stand up until after they knew the shooter was down. They would have gotten communications through their radio devices in their earpieces confirming this. At this moment, the agents are not just protecting Trump, but they're also checking his body for additional injuries and assessing his condition to see if he's ambulatory or not, to see if he can move on his own. Because when someone's adrenaline is pumping, shock can prevent them from knowing if they have multiple injuries. It's actually not their job to return fire immediately, and that's because, meanwhile, the Secret Service counter-sniper team, located here on this rooftop, returned fire within moments and eliminated the gunman here 130 meters away with a shot to the head. About 16 seconds after the shooting first started, the final gunshot can be heard, presumably from the counter-sniper team. Tim McMillan put it this way, saying, quote, "People have wondered, how could the counter-snipers in the video not have seen the would-be assassin prior to him getting off a shot? This is because the area of responsibility for those counter-snipers on the roof behind Trump was very likely in the extended tier. Essentially, they were scanning for threats a great distances well beyond the roughly 150 meters the threat appeared. This is evidenced by the fact that the elevated counter-sniper has to dramatically drop his line of sight to respond to the shooter. 27 seconds after the first shot was fired, we see the next line of defense reach their positions. Members of the Secret Service more heavily armed counter-assault team, seen here in full black uniform, sporting SR-16 suppressed rifles, establish a security perimeter on the stage. They're looking for potential threats that are close quarters. We can see them scanning the up-close rows of the crowd from 0 to 100 meters, because they know the counter-sniper teams are scanning for threats beyond 100 meters. We can see the agents in multicam set up security facing the rear, which shows the tactical discipline of this team, because not every single agent is facing the direction of the incoming fire. There's a natural tendency in human beings to key in on and get tunnel vision on the direction where shots are coming from, but it takes discipline to establish that 360-degree security. This is necessary because they don't know if there might still be another threat out there at this point. Secret Service CAT teams were originally established in 1979, and this is the first time in history that I believe they've responded to a shooting incident involving a former or current president. Trump then told his security service detail to wait. He raised his fist and pumped it at the crowd. He shouted, "Fight," as the crowd chanted USA back. When asked about this moment, McMillan said, quote, "As for letting him pose for the photo op, there's always a degree of conflict between the personal protection detail and the political asset. One's entire mission is to protect their asset, the other's is to be political. I also saw firsthand when then Vice President Biden deviated from the pre-planned path to shake people's hands during a 2013 visit to Savannah. The agents on the ground then escorted Trump to a predetermined evacuation point roughly 50 meters to the rear of the stage in a reinforced armored truck. At this point, roughly 2 minutes after the first shots rang out, he's evacuated and his motorcade then sped to a hospital where he received treatment. Swarms of additional units then make their way to the stage. As a result of the assassination attempt, 1 attendee was killed and 2 others were injured who are still in critical condition from the rounds that missed the president. When I watched the video of what happened last night, it filled me with a visceral reaction of disgust and anger. It made me concerned for my country. I'm praying that somehow we can find a way to emerge from this tragedy stronger than before and show that we won't let the deranged acts of one individual tear us apart. This is a satellite image of the venue where the rally was held at Butler Farms Showgrounds near Butler, Pennsylvania. It's a wide open outdoor field with ground level and rooftop visibility that extends over 100 meters in every direction. the gunman was able to somehow evade security and managed to get onto this rooftop here. It's about 420 feet or 130 meters away from the podium and stage where Trump was giving his speech. He was on a one-story building with a pitch that's probably about 25 feet in elevation. Law enforcement reported the shooter used an AR-style rifle recovered at the scene. This suggests that it's most likely a 5.56 round. If that's the case, with a scope, 130 meters is an incredibly easy shot for someone who knows how to shoot. The 6 to 8 bullets appeared to miss President Trump by only a few millimeters after he turned his head slightly to the right. The gunman might have aimed for the head because it wouldn't be unheard of for a politician to wear body armor during a speech. It looks like the Secret Service counter-sniper team were using what looks to be a special version of the bolt-action Remington 700 with a suppressor firing a 300 Winchester Magnum round with a powerful variable scope. For reference, that's got substantial recoil and pinpoint accuracy out to 800 meters and beyond. To the point of what McMillan was saying earlier, this is the type of rifle that you'd be looking for extended range threats beyond 150 meters. This video posted on X of the counter-sniper team has 15 million views, with people disagreeing on whether or not the would-be assassin took the first shot or if the counter-sniper team fired first. The way I look at the security measures are that they're a tiered and layered approach. The sniper team is one of the last lines of defense. If they're pulling triggers, that means a lot of other steps have already gone wrong, because ideally a shooter should never even have gotten within a mile of an elevated clear shot of the former president. People are inevitably going to be picking apart the split-second decisions of the first responders, and I can understand why there's some value in that. But I think the more important question is, how much resources and funding were they given based on the tempo of their operations, and how big was Trump's Secret Service personnel detail? How many resources did they have available to them? How thin were they spread? In Tim McMillan's analysis, he stated, quote, "Based on limited details at this point, in my opinion, the security breakdown occurred in the middle tier, which would likely include law enforcement who were supposed to be assigned to the area near the outbuildings. History was at a fork in the road here that was determined by less than an inch in a fraction of a second. This building that the gunman took up a firing position on is not a part of the Butler Farm Show perimeter. It lies just outside and belongs to a different company called AGR International. They're a supplier of automation equipment for glass and plastic packaging, but that could be one potential reason as to why this happened, because it was outside the perimeter of the event. But beyond a few trees, there's nothing between the president, just a wide open field that separates the two. The Secret Service advance team would have created a plan weeks in advance that normally would have identified every single elevated potential sniper position within line of sight. A quick count shows there are about 18 buildings that have a clear line of sight that I've marked for you on the map. Agents would normally either have someone posted up on each location, or they would strictly control access to all these buildings on the ground days in advance. I actually have some idea of how these operations work, because over 10 years ago in 2015, President Obama visited a place that I was working at. The Secret Service came to our building weeks in advance for preparation. They did a background check on me and everyone who worked there to make sure none of us were a bunch of weirdos. The Secret Service entirely blocked off access to multiple blocks in Midtown New York City. They even parked a row of garbage trucks from the city all around the building to prevent vehicle-borne IEDs from driving into or slamming through the perimeter checkpoints. They spared no expense, did multiple bomb sweeps in advance, and checked to ensure the building was empty the night before. This is called a sterilizing operation, where they do these kind of clean sweeps. Agents were thorough and detailed. However, it's possible that the former president was not granted the same size security service for his detail or security funding. My understanding is that former President Trump would have had an increased security detail available to him as soon as he officially became the Republican nominee this week. Information is still coming out, and we still have a lot to learn in the coming days and weeks, but normally those buildings, especially ones that are that close in proximity, would have had access restricted, which is why this eyewitness account is all the more concerning.
We noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, and, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle.
A rifle.
We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely.
There were thousands of people at this event, though, and this early testimony is still being verified. The House Oversight Committee has already called on Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle to testify to Congress about what went wrong.
Is this a failure of security?
Really, at this point, we're not going to make that assessment. Things need to occur investigatively to make those determinations of what, if any, failures there were.
The Department of Homeland Security, in their 2024 assessment, identified several rising threats inside America this year, including foreign and domestic terrorism and political extremism. The report states over the past year, both domestic violent extremists and homegrown violent extremists, inspired by foreign terrorist organizations, have engaged in violence in reaction to social political events, motivated by a mix of conspiracy theories, personalized grievances, and enduring racial, ethnic, religious, and anti-government ideologies often shared online. At first, I was shocked that this even happened in our country. It would be the first time a U.S. president or presidential candidate was injured in an attempted assassination since President Ronald Reagan was shot in 1981. But maybe I shouldn't have been that surprised. According to this New York Times nationwide poll, 10% of those surveyed said that the use of force is justified to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president. A third of those gave that answer also said they owned guns. That's why the next major question will be, what was the shooter's motive? There are many different potential motivations, as we've already seen them play out around the world in recent assassination attempts. The United States Intelligence Agency recently helped foil a Russian plot to assassinate the CEO of German company Rheinmetall that's providing artillery and vehicles used against Russia. There was also an assassination attempt against the Slovak prime minister for political purposes. The FBI, who's heading up the investigation, released information that the shooter's a 20-year-old white male from Pennsylvania. I'm not going to say his name publicly on this platform because I don't want to give air or notoriety to an individual like that. But finding out the motive for law enforcement officials will be an important step to making sure there aren't additional threats. If it does turn out to be politically motivated, it could be a disgruntled Republican or Democrat, which would have an impact on where this goes from here. I definitely should not have been that shocked after seeing things like this New York City theatrical group, Shakespeare in the Park, doing a rendition of President Trump getting stabbed to death in modern-day version of Julius Caesar while he was in office. It wouldn't even be the first politically motivated assassination attempt on Trump. In 2016, someone tried to pull a Secret Service agent's service pistol on Trump, but he was stopped and arrested. This is disturbing to me, and I kind of needed to get this off my chest. I needed to say something about this so that I feel like it's not just bottled up inside, and I think some other people hopefully can understand where I'm coming from. This is not a politically motivated video. I hope I provided some valuable information or insight. Be sure to follow Tim McMillan on Twitter. He's an expert. He's the guy to go to on this topic.